There's been lots of debate this week on F1 Twitter about whether having a bumper month like we're about to have in the month of May slash end of April slash start of June is a good or a bad thing for the sport of Formula One. And as I record this video, it is the week of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And over the next 6 weeks, there are going to be a total of 5 Grand Prix races that technically span across 3 continents, given that Baku is in Eurasia, and then obviously we have the mainland Europe races, and we also have North America. Now, while this may be entertaining for fans, that really only is going to remain true for as long as the teams can keep up with this grueling schedule, which is a very tall order. And it's one that I just can't see being sustainable in its current state, especially if we really are going to see these 30 races per season that's predicted by 2030. If that becomes a reality, which, F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali has suggested that there is enough interest there for that to become a reality, I just don't think it's going to be sustainable. Did you know that from a logistics standpoint, DHL estimates that each Formula One team, I say each Formula One team, transports around 50 tons of cargo per year, which can cost up to $8 million. That's literally just getting things from race A to race B throughout the season. And that cargo, which is managed by DHL, travels more than 130 kilometers across the course of a season. And it travels in these massive Boeing cargo planes. And there's, on top of that, another estimated 300 trucks that go by road between races. So I don't know about you, but when I start to think about the monetary, the human, the environmental costs of what would be involved in increasing all of that cargo movement by over 30% over the next 7 years, I see many problems. So let's talk about it. Bad geographical planning is a big issue in Formula One, let's be honest. While I understand that it may never be perfect due to a number of constraints, a lot of them relating to race contracts, the next 6 weeks are a prime example of this problem manifesting itself in the ugliest way. We start off with a race in Eurasia at Baku. We then zip over to Miami on the east coast of the US, only to have to come back to Europe again for 3 races before making a return trip eastward for a second time to Canada in June. There are so many things wrong with this picture, and from the stress that it puts on the logistics to the personnel that travel to every single race, across the teams, media, the FIA, let's please not forget the absolutely awful effect also the Formula One logistics have on the environment, despite all the advancements that we're making towards fuel efficiency. Is this really the best that we can do, this schedule? At the top of this video, I mentioned the human cost of an increased volume in races. And this is something that is, for some reason, a bit controversial, because for a lot of people who are fans of the sport or whose dream it is to work in Formula One, they think, come on, are people who work in Formula One really complaining about having the best job in the world? But people with those sort of opinions aren't considering anything that happens beyond what they see during the time period between them turning on the TV to watch a race and turning it off when the race is finished. And it's the smallest part possibly of what goes on, because everything else feeds into making that happen. And the reality for the guys and gals working in the Formula One teams is they spend the majority of the year away from their friends and family. They endure many hours on planes, trains and automobiles when traveling between races, and they often work 12 plus hour shifts when most of us would consider a regular 9 to 5 a working day. So do they get to experience some kick-ass stuff at the same time? Absolutely, but that is far from saying it's the same thing as having the perfect job or the dream job. And for anyone to say that a bumper race period such as what we're about to go into now isn't anything to complain about, personally, I think that's pretty ridiculous. We may not have had any on-track racing for the past 4 weeks, but that does not mean that every employee of every Formula One team has just taken a month-long holiday. Can I just Can I just confirm that here now on my channel? That is not the reality. Guess what they have been doing? Working. That's right. They've been working because Formula One teams are not born in the paddock, they're born in the factory. And those people are burned out. I don't even have to be one of them to know that. And they definitely are not going to like the idea, for the most part, of extending the season even further. Now, you might be saying, okay, well, if the problem is that staff are overworked, just hire more staff, right? Let me stop you right there, because you may remember a little known thing called the cost cap, and the fact that one particular team was cited for a significant breach of said cost cap not too long ago. And if the cost cap remains as it is, or it isn't adjusted to allow for additional staff being hired within F1 teams as the calendar continues to expand, then you will see carnage on the way to this 30 race future. I guarantee it. For example, could the FIA create specific guidelines or rules around the staffing part of the cost cap so that teams can hire rotational staff for critical roles that have to be there on the ground at the racetracks every weekend? Could they allow a fair split of travel across each employee across the course of an F1 season? You know, based on the, forgive the expression, dog's dinner that the FIA has made so far over budgets and the cost cap issue in general, I'm not filled with confidence that they will get this right. And all I can do is sincerely hope that the teams themselves in the meantime are going to take employee well-being, you know, as seriously as they possibly can, and that the FIA finds some way of doing a better job of implementing the cost cap effectively, so that, you know, we're not in a scenario that we're in now where there's reports coming out that there's now multiple teams in breach of the cap because they're just not afraid of the penalties that were doled out to Red Bull after their breach. So they kind of think, well, why not? If it's, you know, is it worth the risk? And that, my friends, is not how an effective rule operates. Let's talk about the cars themselves, because you may recall that Charles Leclerc received a grid place penalty within the first 2 races of the 2023 season for exceeding his allotment of 2 electronic control systems per year by race 2. Now, you could say it was a freak set of events, it was, you know, it couldn't have been predicted, etc., etc. But in both 2021 and 2022, we saw similar penalties start to be doled out fairly widely across the grid about 2/3 of the way through the season, and it would be nothing less than vital for the powers that be in Formula One to update the allotments of parts in conjunction with an increased number of races per season in order for us to avoid essentially what would be a total circus if it was to remain the same, where teams would start being hampered by these penalties earlier and earlier and earlier, and it's going to start messing with the championship. Like, I doubt I'm the only F1 fan who would be very angry at the prospect of a championship being decided by something like that, which could have been dealt with or avoided way ahead of time with a bit more insight and planning. And in fairness, I'm actually pretty hopeful that this one is going to be executed properly, because we've just seen the announcement of the new sprint format. We may get into that in another video, but let's see how it goes in Baku first, and we'll try to reserve judgment, kind of. But each driver has now been given an additional ICE, turbocharger, MGUH and MGUK. So they're suggesting that this format it may cause a bit more wear and tear, therefore they're willing to expand the number of parts allotted to each driver in these critical areas. So I have some hope. Thank you for tuning into my latest video, everyone. Make sure you drop a comment down below. I'll be hanging out with you all in the comment section once this video drops. And just tell me, like, do you think that F1 is really going to reach 30 races, a 30 race long season within the next 7 years? And if so, do you think that it would fall apart at the seams if it's not managed properly? As I say, will be interested to hear your views, interested, intrigued, all of the above. But until then, take care and enjoy your racing.